Alright, welcome back to Movies I Watched last month. Here I am, doing my thing. So, let's just get into it. I've now been doing this for 10 months, and this is one of the best months that I've had for watching movies in those past 10 months. I really enjoyed to full-on loved over half of the movies I watched this month. But, that being said, there's still a couple stinkers, so let's just get into it. The Bounty Hunter was awful, as was Bird Box. I've put off watching this movie for months. I never even planned on seeing it, but my family wanted to watch it, so I obliged, and it's so bad. It thinks it's so much smarter than it is, and there's so many plot holes and missed opportunities that I just had a horrible time all throughout. It was the most mediocre a mediocre horror movie can be, and I can't recommend it to anybody. Also, I got a haircut, if none of you noticed, and now you see why I prefer to go with long hair, because it's bad. Since the world is shut down at the moment, I got the chance to go see this in a theater because they were doing reruns of old movies that they still had, and it was wonderful being able to see it on the big screen. There were genuinely some really cool shot sequences, but it was just so... It was such a mixed bag. I still enjoyed it here and there, but there was no reason for it to be the length of a Lord of the Rings movie, so I don't know. It had its moments, but I'm probably never going to watch it again. Trumbo was okay. It had a really good leading performance, and Bryan Cranston definitely deserved his Oscar nomination, but that's really all I've got to say about it. Its cinematography was really flat, and its art direction was pretty uninspired, so other than that leading performance, I'd skip this one. Since its release a couple years ago, I'd had this movie built up to be this sensational thing that would change my life, and I really can't see where people are coming from. It's well directed, and it's got a couple decent performances here and there, and it does balance comedy and drama pretty well, but it was just not really my thing. I ended up not liking basically any character in the movie, even at the moments when they're supposed to be redeemed. So, I don't know. I wish it was for me, but it's just not. Death Proof was the second to last Tarantino movie I've needed to see to complete my journey through his directorial lineage. And it's not bad. Quentin Tarantino has gone on record as saying that this is his worst movie, and while I can't completely agree with that, I can see where he's coming from. The whole thing just kind of feels half-baked. If this movie were maybe another 45 minutes long and had another plotline thrown in there, I could see myself really enjoying this movie. But as it is, it feels like it's just missing a lot of its potential. All of that being said, as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a wonderful tribute to classic era Hollywood, I think this is a perfect tribute to the B-movie era of the 60s up till now. After this point, everything I saw this month was really good, and they're hard to rank. So, some of these may not be concrete in the long run, but anyways. 8th Grade was one of the cringiest movies I've ever seen, and that is not a bad thing at all. It was awful to watch in the best possible way. I related to every character in it wholeheartedly, and it was just, it perfectly captures that part of your life in the 21st century. I can't recommend it enough. Martin Scorsese's Silence was really good, a very slow burn, but very good. It was shot beautifully, and it had all kinds of wonderful moments all throughout that really stick in my head after seeing it. I really have nothing negative to say other than that it was slow, and that slow pacing really wasn't a problem because it held my attention the entire time. I think this movie has a ton to say about religion and faith and all kinds of things, and it really looks at it all through a pretty objective lens, which you don't get a lot in Christian movies whatsoever. I will be the first to admit that Christian movies and music are not my thing whatsoever. I don't think they should be anyone's thing, because they act more as uncreative propaganda to people who just need to hear that they're doing a good job. But Silence approaches these ideas from a really interesting perspective, so I think it's totally worth watching. And if you want to learn more about Silence, I definitely recommend you check out Josh Keefe's video. He does a really good job deconstructing the whole thing. Glory was a lot better than I thought it would be going in. There's a few parts here and there that come off as kinda corny, but I think it does a really good job at portraying what it was supposed to portray. Not to mention, it feels like a movie much more advanced than something from the late 80s. When I first watched it, I thought it felt like something made from the early 2000s. From a technical perspective, it does all kinds of things that I haven't seen in many 80s movies. It was spectacular. I don't know if I'll ever rewatch it, but it was really good. At Eternity's Gate was pretty incredible. It just makes me appreciate Vincent van Gogh and his artwork so much more, and it makes me appreciate pursuing artistic endeavors even more too. I think it pretty perfectly encapsulates what it's like to feel when you're creating something. And if anything, it just makes me want to go out there and create even more things. Willem Dafoe, without a doubt, gives one of his best performances in a career that seems like he gives his best performance in every movie he ever does. This movie is not for everybody, but for those of you who really like his artwork or just like painting in general, I definitely recommend it. I watched Kill Bill 1 and 2, and I cannot put them in separate placements on this list. It's so clear that they were meant to be watched together. They're both clearly separate films, but I don't think you can watch them apart from each other. They have to be put together to be fully enjoyed, at least in my opinion. The first one is just dumb, wonderfully choreographed action on and on for 100 minutes, while the second one goes out of its way to explain that dumb action and give the characters motivations along the way. These films are really, really fun, and they have probably my favorite usage of blood of any other Tarantino movie. They're really, really good, and if you haven't seen them, check them out, but watch them together. Midnight in Paris was fantastic, and that's really all I could say about it. I don't want to say anything else because you should just go watch it. It's that good. From the moment I saw what I consider to be the best movie I saw this month, I knew immediately that it was my favorite. And not only that, it's probably made its way into my top 100, if not my top 50 favorite movies of all time. As I said a few minutes ago with Silence, I will be the first to admit that Christian movies 99.9% of the time are just awful. That being said, my favorite movie of all time is technically a Christian movie. And I am happy to say that Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ easily falls into that 0.01%. This movie is unbelievable. Every asset of it is working to make just this whole package that feels so complete. The cinematography is fantastic and can really make you think at times. Willem Dafoe playing Jesus Christ is a literal godsend. This is the most realistic and human way I have ever seen Jesus portrayed in any form of media, and the people who have called this heresy in the past are just wrong. Martin Scorsese himself has said that in a lot of Christian artwork and media, you always see Jesus portrayed in the divine aspect. That duality is portrayed perfectly in this movie. It perfectly captures what it would be like for Jesus to be fully divine and fully human. When Judas backstabs Jesus, it's heartbreaking. Not to mention Peter Gabriel knocked it out of the park with the soundtrack. This movie is gorgeous, and even though I'm not much of a religious person, if anything, this draws me closer to Christianity than any other piece of media ever has. And even setting that aside, it's just a fantastic film, and I guess I'll just leave it at that. This past month has been a really, really good month for movies for me. Again, I hope you check out some of these films and form your own opinions along the way. But for this month, I guess that's all from me. You all hang in there, and have a good night.